Hey everybody, this is Dream, and today we have the race at Phoenix Raceway, the Shriners 500. It's going to be a very solid race. I think it's going to have a lot of opportunity for good fantasy output. I think it's going to be a pretty high scoring slate here as we have some really key drivers that aren't starting near the front, which is definitely going to help with the upside on this race, especially with some of the favorites. So if we look at our top three, Kyle Larson, Ryan Blaney, and Logano, those are my favorites to score the most fantasy points today. I do think that we have a couple others like William Byron, Denny Hamlin, and Ross Chastain are all in play to potentially win the race as well as Chase Elliott. But with that said, let's get into our plays here. So we're going to start at the top with Larson. Now, Larson is a favorite to potentially win this. He started the season pretty strong too, and getting a win in the last race, he has potential to win here. He's also led lots of laps here over the past six races, and he's had five top tens in those six. He's starting in 17th, which also gives him a little bit of upside here. Looking at Ryan Blaney, he's also a guy I really like a lot. He's starting 16th, right beside Larson. He's had two top five finishes in a row, and he's had a lot of success at this track. He's a top driver rating here, and he's got a lot of potential with the mid-pack starting spot. The only downside is he hasn't had a win here in the past six, but that may change here today. Penske is definitely a very good team for this race, so I do like his potential here. And picking between him and Larson is going to be somewhat tough, but uh, because both of them are definitely in play. Uh, then we'll look at William Byron. Now he's starting fifth. That gives him a lot of potential here. He's also one of the favorites to win this race potentially, and he's also won a race here in the past five. I also think um, Hendrick is one of the top three teams here, along with Penske and Joe Gibbs. So he should be in the running for a top 10 at the very least, and his starting position does allude to him staying in the top 10 for most of the race. Looking at Denny Hamlin, now he starts on the pole. That gives him a lot of potential here. He hasn't uh, actually led a lot of laps at this track, only 47 of the last few races, over the last six races here. But he has managed two top fives and four top tens in that stretch. He's also starting on the pole, so that gives him a lot of potential here. He's also one of the top five drivers favored to win the race, so he definitely has some upside. He could just stay up front all race for that matter. We're going to look at Martin Truex Jr. next. He's starting 11th. He's been in the top 15 in every race this year so far, and he's had some success here. He is rated lower than most of the other drivers in his price range, so that is a concern here. But he does have the ability to win, and he has some top fives at this track, as well as actually win in the last six. So he's definitely in play here, but he definitely carries a little bit of risk. Looking at Joey Logano, he is absolutely um, oops, where is he at? There he is. Sorry about that. He's led a ton of laps of this track, 334, which is actually best of all the active drivers in the last six races here. He's also carried a win and several top fives and some top tens here as well. He's also starting 23rd, so that gives him a lot of potential and upside here. He seems like he might be a little bit overlooked here, and Penske's a really good team at this track, so I think he's a really solid option. He also had a top 10 finish last week, so I look for him to continue that here. Kyle Busch is very interesting this week. He is starting in 31st, which is pretty low for him. He's been up and down start to the season, and this is a track that he has managed four top tens in the past six races, but he does have a lower floor here, um, as some of the other drivers in this price range have been better just from a driver rating wise and everything. And he hasn't led a lap here in those six races either. That said, he is Kyle Busch, and his team is pretty good. So it's this type of track. So I think he's probably going to be somebody that has some potential, especially with that starting position. But he definitely carries a lot of risk today, as he hasn't been as good as we really would think he would be. Looking at Ross Chastain here, now Ross is starting 12th, and this puts him in a really good position to have a really solid finish here, especially him being about $9,000. It makes him a very favorable option today. I do like his upside, and he definitely draws really good metrics for this race. He's been absolutely phenomenal here in the past, and he has 158 total laps led over the last six races, along with a win. He's hard to ignore as a good play on the slate, so I do think he's a great option and somebody that I'm going to try to roster a lot here. Then we're going to look at Chase Elliott here. Sorry about the thing being a little bit off. But anyway, Chase Elliott has been very good in the past, but he's had two top fives in the past five races here and four top 20s. His starting position does carry some risk, but he is a guy that can stay up front and get the win if he can stick up there. Hendrick has been really solid here, so I think he's a great option on this track. Um, then we're going to move into some value plays here, and we're going to look at Chase Briscoe for the 14. Now, I have some concern with Stewart Haas so far this season, as all their drivers have mostly struggled to some degree, but their drivers are capable, and this track is one where Chase Briscoe has been very favorable in the past. In the last six races here, he's got a win, several top fives and top tens, and he has a pretty good driver rating, actually just as high as Kyle Busch's, who we talked about earlier, and he's considerably cheaper. So he's definitely interesting on this one. Obviously, Stewart Haas is risky today, but they do have some potential here, if especially if they can start figuring it out. Looking at Alex Bowman, now Bowman has um, really good race car here. A top 20 is definitely in order here, and he's starting 25th. Or sorry, yeah, 25th. I do think he's a viable option today, though he does carry a little bit of risk. Hendrick cars are really good at this track, and so I think he's going to have that top 20 locked in. It's just a matter of how high he can get to if he's going to pay off or not. Looking at Josh Berry, he also is in a Stewart Haas car, but he actually was successful last year when he was driving for Chase Elliott here, and he ended up with a decent finish of 10th. I think he can continue that here and get another good finish, especially since he's starting near the back. Now even if he can get in this, as long as he can get in the top 20, though, he has a lot of potential for a good fantasy output day with his starting position. But he definitely carries a lot of risk with these cars being inconsistent. Um, then we're going to look at Austin Dillon for in the three. Now he's starting near the back as well, and that does give him a lot of upside here as he's had five top 20s in the past six races here. He definitely carries some risk being Austin Dillon, but this seems like a track that he's actually managing some pretty good finishes at. He's not gotten any top 10s though, but his starting position gives him a lot of utility here. Then we're going to look at Noah Gragson. Now he's starting seventh, and so he's also in another Stewart Haas car, but he has a lot of potential here. He started the season pretty well with two top tens, and the last race was a good one for him and sixth place finish, and he might have the best car for Stewart Haas. So, uh, and he qualified well as well. So I think he's somebody that's definitely carrying some risk, but he's cheap, and that does give him some utility here. And he actually has a pretty good odds for having a good finish at this track. So I think he's a good viable option. Looking at Austin Cindric, Cindric has been a guy that has had some success here, albeit limited. He's had um, one top 10, one top 20 here in the past four races, but he started the season pretty solid. The real concern here is that he won't, the fact he's starting at the back, that he's just not going to have a lot to get up, through this. But he does have that potential with a decent car for Penske, so he definitely carries a lot of risk, but he's kind of a Hail Mary throw on from that perspective. Looking at Carson Hocevar, he's starting pretty high today at 10th, but he does have that top 20 potential today, and this obviously the starting potential is not ideal, but he is kind of a Hail Mary play at this price point, so he's definitely worth a look. But he definitely draws some risk at that one. And then we'll look at Hemrick for colleague. Now, he is a top 20 capable car. And the fact that he's starting in 21st gives him some potential here. There's hope for him here, and he's actually been in the top 20 in all three of the first races. If he can get a top 15, then he'll definitely pay off here, but he definitely carries a little bit of risk from that perspective as well. So, with that said, guys, thank you for liking, commenting, subscribing. If you have any comments or questions, feel free to leave them below, and have a nice day, guys.